Tabletop RPGs such as Dungeons & Dragons are all about the adventure. What is your favorite story from your adventures? Our characters would stop periodically at the casino to gamble. This gave us a chance to stop the adventure and play poker for a while. Often during these poker breaks, we would spin the dice on the table. One time, while trying to spin a particular heaving d20, one of us, it may or may not have been me, shot it sideways and it broke one piece on Rob's mom's shelf of her collection of salt and pepper shakers. We were in his dining room. We hastily wrote an apology note from the character and placed it under the broken piece and went about our game. We did not want to tell her what had happened. I do not remember her ever finding it. Good thing she doesn't dust much. The Charge of the Bath Zombies. We had been tasked with finding Arathis, the goddess of civilization, and bringing her from the astral sea to the material plane. This necessitated sailing the astral sea from our entry point to the city of Shalai, Arathis' domain, and where we expected to find her. Our ship was the warship. It was like that when we got here, honest. She had an attitude. If you've ever read the Culture series by Ian M. Banks, you know what I mean. Anyway, fights happened, plot happened, and we found Arathis floating unconscious in a tank of Astrum, what the Astral Sea is made of. After trying several elegant and clever, but ultimately fruitless because the DM is a fairly direct kind of guy, methods of extracting her, we smashed the tank and took her with us. Unfortunately, on the ship it became clear that she needed to be constantly submerged in Astrum in order to survive the trip. That was fine on board, there was a bath for us to keep her in. However, our exit point was a pyramid in the center of the island, and we'd have to trek through jungle to get there. Also, we'd probably end up fighting our way through an enemy army for that part of the journey, because DM's gonna DM, so what were we to do? My character for this campaign was a goth wizard called Necronomica, who had rebelled against her loving, middle-class parents by running away to join a cult of Orcus, and becoming a necromancer. She was fun to play. We killed a fair few enemies on the high seas, so Neck always had a few zombies handy. Thus our solution to the problem of transporting an unconscious goddess, who needed to be submerged at all times in a hazardous substance, was to turn the bath into some sort of palanquin, and get 4 zombies to carry it, each with a bucket in hand in case the Astrum needed topping off. This went pretty well until we got close to the pyramid and found the inevitable army encamped around it. We hid in the bushes while the rogue went and set a fire at the end of the camp farthest from the door we needed to enter, luring most of the soldiers away from where we needed to be. The plan was then to have the sorcerer create a wall of fire to prevent the soldiers from coming back, allowing us to run for the entrance and escape to the material plane. Unfortunately, zombies are not known for their agility. The DM informed me I needed to roll athletics to see how quickly my laden zombies could shamble. Fair enough. Well, the zombies crit. The bath-carrying zombies hurtled down the corridor of fire with speed and grace, the soundtrack from Chariots of Fire playing in the background, and nary a drop of Astrum was spilled. We all made it back to the material plane and succeeded in reviving Arathis. The end. My group was playing Call of Cthulhu, and our band of PCs was investigating some strange happenings on an island off the coast of Africa. My character was an Indian professor of the occult, who liked to wear suave linen slacks and jackets with nothing underneath. This comes up later. While we were on our way to the island, our boat hit something and began to sink, going stern down into the water. My professor grabbed onto a handhold, but pretty soon he was dangling at a steep angle towards the water. One of our other players missed her roll to grab onto the handrail, so she slid a bit down the deck and managed to grab onto my professor's pant leg. I missed my roll to keep holding on, but only by a little bit, so our GM had a little fun with it. Instead of losing my grip from the added weight on my leg, the professor's belt came loose, and his slacks slipped down and pooled around the face of the lady holding onto him. The boat continued to sink, eventually leaving the bow almost straight up and down. At this point, my professor lost his grip and fell bare ass first into the face of the lady hanging onto him. This was the impetus for one of our more esoteric Cards Against Humanity custom cards, the bare chocolate ass of an Indian man hurtling towards your face. My party arrived on the outskirts of a massive city. We had to figure out a way to infiltrate the palace at the center of the city. We bluffed the guards that we were a traveling troupe of performers so that they'd let us in the city walls. Unfortunately, that meant we had to actually perform, so we went to a square and bluffed our way through a performance. Those members of the party with low charisma just did acrobatics, and we called them tumblers. We eventually built up a large following and gained a patron, who let us stay for free at his house as long as we did nightly performances, and eventually, we were invited to provide the entertainment for the king at the palace. We really played the long game. TLDR, my party of adventurers bluffed that we were a troupe of performers who slowly rose in the ranks until we got to perform for the king. I only remember a couple of stories from my time with D&D, so I'll go with the more interesting of the two. So there's 3 characters relevant to the story: the thief, the mage, and me, a dwarf fighter. We may have had more players at this point, but I only remember 3. We're in a dungeon in what appears to be a storage room. The thief is working on picking the lock on a chest in the middle of the room. The rest of us are just killing time. The first thing that happens is that the mage and I notice a barrel full of spears. I jokingly ask the mage to cast a detect magic on them. He does, and the DM tells him that he sees that the spears are bursting with magic. I ask him to try checking again, the only smart thing my character ever did. He does, and the DM says that they're slightly less magical than we first thought. Moving on, we see a barrel full of cabbages. I pick one and decide to start tossing it in my hand like one does. My DM makes me roll dexterity for this. Nat 1. I accidentally throw the cabbage directly at the chest. I threw it so hard the cabbage shattered into pieces and knocked the chest onto the poor thief who was trying to unlock it. This also triggered a small poison trap in the lock mechanism that did a bit of damage to the thief. Once we're done laughing out of character, the mage and I go pick up the chest off of the thief and patch her up. She finishes picking the lock, and guess what's inside? Snakes. Very angry snakes. Snakes that were very angry about having their home thrown around. And in the space of about 5 minutes, the thief went from tolerating me, to disliking me, to hating me. Later on, I died in a different dungeon, and they pushed my body down some stairs to check for traps. We were playing the classic version of Deadlands Hell on Earth, a slightly futuristic, post-apocalyptic, supernatural, horror survival RPG, in my body doc, a doctor who is also a junker that specializes in cybernetics, who just went by Doc, was captured by some vampires and spirited away into a dead land, the ruins of a city hit by a spiritual nuclear bomb, and also with possibly a conventional nuclear bomb or 10. Doc is, as I describe him, Duke Nukem in a lab coat, complete with sunglasses, and also sports some cybernetics, arm and a leg, which he lost tackling a literal murderous clown in a minefield. He also has a penchant for cheesy one-liners. He ended up waking up in a warehouse on a pallet-sized platform suspended by chains above a very large indoor pool that was filled with filthy, putrid water. I suspected some sort of wasteland horror to be in the water, but it was so much better. Doc spent some time familiarizing himself with his surroundings before starting to make his escape. That's when the hillbilly vampire who captured me, he spoke like a country bumpkin by the way, approached from a far corner of the warehouse with fresh blood on his face. He scaled a column up to the roof trusses before beginning to make his way towards Doc. I wanted some better footing to fight on, so Doc made his way back to the platform. Keep in mind that Doc is basically unarmed. He does have a lightning bolt cannon in his arm, but the hillbilly vampire doesn't need to know that just yet. He's also not afraid of anything. So we get to scrapping and Doc knocks the hillbilly vampire off the platform and into the water. Then the vampire surfaces, leaping high out of the water towards the platform, nearly touching it. Nope, that's not correct. The vampire great white shark leaps from the pool with the vampire in its mouth, nearly to the platform before biting him in half. That's when Doc announces loudly to the empty warehouse, "Looks like he should have waited 30 minutes after eating before going for a swim." Back in 3.5, there was enough expansion books, additional options, multi-class synergies and such that if you really wanted to, you could build some very broken min-max spells that were ridiculously powerful. I loved that stuff. I didn't use it much. In-game, I was just a simple guy who went along on adventures for the sake of friendship and who tried to help people out. I role-played the hell out of a cloistered cleric who had never seen the world but was a super friendly idiot type who would do anything for his buddies. Out of character, Every choice I made for leveling, feats, skills, magic items, class combinations, and the like continued to build an unstoppable force of unadulterated power. In-game, I played pure support. My goal was to make sure everybody in the group got a chance to have as many moments of awesome as we could manage. Buffs, heals, taking blows so they could go for the big artifact, or deal the killing strike on the big baddie. It was all fun for me. Out of game, I even roleplayed extra silly things with the GM, helping to build a water cleaning system for a port town so it didn't smell so bad, but naming the whole system after a sorceress bard in the party so she could gain fame and notoriety, or starting a new village in the mountains after the group cleared out a particularly monster-filled area, which consisted of an evil magician literally calling every monster within miles to attack the group when they were laying siege to his tower. It was a fantastic battle, and in the end, we had the safest few square miles in all of Faerun, and a tower with a portal that allowed for shorter transport times for caravans. Fun sidebars. Finally, one day, the group gets in over its head. A whole nest of green dragons lives in a cave system instead of the one young one they're expecting. The barbarian goes down, the fighter is unconscious, the rogue teleports away with, "I'll try to come back for your bodies." The sorceress is trapped in a gem. Everyone is wailing that it's a total party wipeout and they're going to need to roll up new characters. Cue me, of course. "Hey guys, it's okay, let me try, I think I got this." What? For the first time in 3 years of campaigning, I let my little cleric use his full abilities. 2 rounds later, 3 dragons are dead and the cleric is unharmed. I res and heal people and the rogue even teleports back in so that they can pretend they were there the whole time. Little cleric dude tells everybody the rogue was awesome, by the way. My GM kept looking over my sheet. There wasn't anything he hadn't seen there before. I never hid anything what I was doing. He knew how hard I'd worked to get that spell selection, how much time and experience I'd invested into item creation. The metamagics I spent my feats on, he'd just never really seen me use it. He finally declared the game was over. I'd won, and it was time for the characters to retire in style. We'd been playing for years, and I think he was just done anyway, hence the TPK setup. But this was a much better note to end things on. I miss 3.5. I really loved that rule set. My character threw his voice into the middle of an evacuating crowd to say something like, "Hey, what's up in Infernal?" This was a town under threat of sorcerer terrorists, who would speak in Infernal most of the time. The plan was to scare people into moving away from our cart so we could get back into town before the MacGuffin item we found earlier, no longer in our possession, flattened the entire town and the surrounding fields. It led to a stampede which definitely killed some people, and possibly made our DM consider my character chaotic neutral instead of chaotic good. In the same story, our dragonborn wizard was carrying an amulet of pure chaos given to him by the god of chaos. It turned his normally blizzard-based breath attack into a chaos breath attack, which rearranged the affected contents into a single mess. We found this out when the rabbit he was hunting became a rabbit and grass ball.